This is our urban garden. And we have kale. Everything in here was planted in April, around April. Kale, collard greens, everything's at the end of its course right now. These did a lot better earlier, but once the heat got to them, the worms and bugs just love them. Here's tomatoes. These are the sweet orange ones. This tomato vine is just taking over this whole half of the bed. There's some dinosaur kale or Jacinto. More greens that I just let go. There's a cabbage looper worm. And that's what's been eating it. And they turn into these white butterflies. Marigolds are pest deterrent. Basil I planted way back there is now humongous. It's trying to find the sun. You can tell it's sticking out. Bell peppers. These are reds, just waiting for them to turn red if they do. If not, I'll cut them before they get overripe. There's more bell peppers, sweet bell peppers. This is a red plant, and since it's cooled down, the plants kind of come back with more flowers there. There. And this is another pepper plant. It's supposed to have orange. Be orange once they're ripe. Forgot the name of it. And these are jalapenos. There. And so far I'm still experimenting, seeing how these grow. Here's a garden salsa pepper. Just testing them when they're green and when they're red. This one's on color changing. Thai basil. Generally you don't want it to flower like this, but I just wanted to see how it would do on its own. Kind of the theme of this garden right now, since everything's gonna stop producing fruit pretty soon. This is a bean trellis. Looked a lot better when stuff was alive. We have, these are pole beans, Blue Lake, and then the Kentucky blues, which are the purple. And they make these really pretty flowers before the fruit comes. Here's, had a yellow squash there, pulled that mint here, which the worms have ate a lot of it, but it's very resilient, comes back very easily. It's actually hard to get rid of. And then you have a zucchini plant here. There's a couple fruits forming there, a few more babies here and here. This is the male flower. Oh, once they're done, they kind of fall off easily. And the males aren't attached to any fruit, and they have what's called a I forgot what it's called, stigma or something, and that's what the bees carry the pollen from there, and they pollinate the fruit female there. So sometimes I'll hand pollinate those to make sure they get they grow with fruit. This is another tomato vine, probably indeterminate. Grew little yellow tomatoes. And here's one right there. And there's some hornworms that I saw, but they hide pretty well. So I'm just letting those grow, and oh, there it is. Right there. So since this plant's done growing, I'm gonna let him hang out there. And sometimes they're beneficial at nighttime for pollination, since I plan to do a fall garden, winter garden, since it doesn't get too cold where I'm at during the winter. They may help with pollination during the winter, depending what I grow. Here's another zucchini. These cucumbers are the best I've ever had cucumbers grow. Produce a lot. In fact, there's a couple there ready to be picked. And what's so cool is there's ladybug larvae living on this plant, and they're becoming pupates. Right here is a pupate. It's a ladybug pupate. The larva, there's another pupate, and the larva look like, what's that? Spider. Oh wow. So this one today was actually a larvae earlier today, and it just turned into a pupa. I've never experienced this. Here's another one. Oh, they're all morphing. It's that time of year. No, I can't find any larvae. Wow. So within a matter of 24 hours, they were larvae. Now they're all turning into pupates, and then they'll become ladybugs. Pupates like the cocoon stage. And some globe eggplant coming in. These have done okay. When I first planted them, I didn't know what they were, so I planted them closely, which I think didn't cause them to do too well. But I did harvest a few and got some, and these are about as big as they've gotten. Planted a watermelon, which wasn't deep enough. It was kind of an experiment. There's a little baby watermelon, but that's won't do anything from there. I think it was way too shallow. It was just an experiment. Got some herbs here: thyme, sage, oregano, and again everything is flowering, which means it'll stop producing the herb. This is just a barrel I've been using to throw just scrap foods in. It's actually, I just pulled this green bean vine out because it sprouted. And there's a cucumber, eggplant, and I buried some stuff. And these look like probably cucumber plants coming up. So I'm just using this as kind of a compost barrel for now. Some red potatoes I planted that are now, look like they're dying back, so they might be ready. It's been about 3 months. Haven't really grown these before, so testing it out. You can see this is one that I planted here. And this is the asparagus ferns. I've had a few asparagus that have produced. This is now its 4th year growing. It is a perennial, but it takes about 2 to 4 years before it produces the spears that you can eat. Because usually the first year they'll grow this thin, and it takes about three, I think the 3rd year I finally had one that came up that was this thick, and it was the best asparagus I've ever had. So I have to cut this back. I'm still learning how to grow asparagus. So I need to cut that back once it gets more brown. That way it stores the energy and puts it in the crown, which this is called the crown, where the asparagus spears will pop up. You can see one right here kind of popping up, but it probably won't make it because these usually are one of the first things that show up during spring that you can harvest. So it's almost like a first spring crop, at least that I have in my garden, and that in this area potentially. These are seeds I'm gonna harvest and save and maybe sprout. Of course, these are females, where you see all the seeds. And when you have females, a lot of the energy goes into making the seed pods instead of producing spears. So typically you want male plants, but it's hard to know if it's female or male until you get to this stage. So I have some lavender there, another barrel. I just have borage. There's our friendly bee. Bees love these. You can use the leaves for tea. It's supposed to be really good for you. I haven't tried it myself, and I've seen people use the flowers for decorative, like on a plate of something you're gonna eat. More lavender, some strawberries here. I think there's one. We have one here. These are from a friend, so still learning how to grow these. And this is also a moringa tree from the same friend. He started this indoors from seed, so it grew kind of lengthy, where it's just real tall and thin. You want more of a thicker base before it gets this tall. So it was kind of dying, but now it's kind of coming back. So I'm gonna let it go through the course, probably bring it in the winter time, because it is a kind of subtropical, tropical plant. Doesn't like the cold too much. In this bed I had another tomato tree I pulled because it was kind of done, and I had 3 okras here that were doing wonderful, and those thrive in the heat. So once it started to cool down, it wasn't producing wasn't producing enough for it to still be kept in the ground and taking nutrients from the soil, so I pulled those last week, and my eggplants are doing very well. I'm not sure if this is just a last minute boom before they stop producing, because it did go a little chilly, so they might be going into like survival mode where they pump out as much fruit before the plant dies, which is great. And I think that's all for now. This is some rosemary that did okay. Still alive, but didn't grow much. And I'll show you my peach tree and worm farm next.